In this edition of American Railway, we focus on the CSX Transportation Cumberland Subdivision, which runs east from Cumberland to Weatherton, just beyond historic Harpers Ferry. While in Cumberland, we'll pay a short visit to the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad, which runs west to Frostburg. The most easterly point on the CSX route that we filmed previously, back in 2009, was Hyndman, Pennsylvania, just to the north of Cumberland. We returned there very briefly before heading east from Cumberland, with filming locations including Green Spring, Great Cacapon, Martinsburg and Shenandoah Junction, where the Norfolk Southern crosses the CSX, before finishing our journey at Harpers Ferry, with shots within the historic town and from the spectacular overlook on Maryland Heights. We'll take a closer look at filming locations in downtown Cumberland in the centre of this map in a moment, but this wider view shows vantage points on public roads in the south of the city to see the CSX locomotive shop's yard, and to the north, Helmstetter's curve on the Western Maryland Scenic Railway, and the CSX track heading towards a brief visit to Hyndman, Pennsylvania. In downtown Cumberland, we'll take in views of the Western Maryland Scenic Railway terminus and near the Amtrak station on the CSX main, but for the first scenes, cameras are positioned at grade crossings just north of the Amtrak station and near Viaduct Junction. Powering west, sporting the YN2 hockey stick livery, these GE C40-9W locos were built in 1994 to C44-8W standard. Incobraza Industries manufacture soybean products including hull pellets, meal, long life and refined bleached and deodorized vegetable oils, and biodiesel. After the Valero Marketing and Supply crude oil tank car, there were 44 autoracks. As the last of these autoracks pass by, it's revealed that Amtrak's westbound Capital Limited arrived slightly early. Having completed the crew change, Train 29 will draw forward to give the rear passenger cars access to the platform before departing on time. The usual motive power is a pair of Genesis P42 DC locos, but on this occasion the lead Genesis is working with a B32-8WH. Both locos are equipped with GE's 7FDL prime mover, but the Genesis has the 4,250 horsepower 16-cylinder variant, whereas the B32-8WH has only 12 cylinders rated at 3,200 horsepower. It is normal practice to conduct a brake test while under power on departure. Amtrak 29 is the 4:05 p.m. departure from Washington, due to arrive at Chicago at 8:45 the following morning. next morning we peered through the early mist at the locomotive shop's yard. Right to left here are an ET44AH, a GP38-2 and a GP40-2. Left to right are an SD50-2, SD70 Mac, GP38-2, and behind the road slug converted from a GP30 is another SD70 Mac. This genset is a National Railway Equipment 3GS21B. Built in 1973, this Jeep 38-2 began life with the Seaboard Coastline. We got back to the Amtrak station just in time for this. The 9 locos from the road slug back will be dropped off in the yard for the locomotive shops. These tank cars were carrying liquefied petroleum gas. More petrol than the white tank contains hydrochloric acid. These black tankers held sodium hydroxide solution, chlorine, and more liquefied petroleum gas. Steel coil cars. Liquefied petroleum gas again. The Western Maryland Scenic Railway operates from this former Western Maryland railway station, built in 1913, to the depot at Frostburg that was previously owned by the Cumberland and Pennsylvania Railroad. A turntable has been installed there that was taken from Elkins, West Virginia. The Baldwin 280 steam loco, number 734, that was once normal power, had to be taken out of service when the FRA inspection was due. A former Chesapeake, Ohio 2662, number 1309, was obtained from the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore and is undergoing restoration to return steam haul excursions to the railway. Meanwhile, the Mounting Limited was powered by a pair of former Conrail GP30 locos dating from the early 60s. Three cameras are positioned around the half-mile arc known as Helmstetter's Curve, which sweeps across the Cache Valley. Returning to Cumberland Amtrak station, a pair of ES44 DC locos is at the head of this eastbound stack train. Cumberland is the county seat of Allegheny County, Maryland. It was once the second largest city in Maryland after Baltimore, earning the nickname Queen City. The population peaked around 40,000 during the Second World War, but today it is estimated to be less than 20,000, the smallest for over 100 years. However, the Cumberland, Maryland, West Virginia Metropolitan Statistical Area has a population about 5 times that size, but unfortunately is one of the poorest in the United States, ranking lower than 300th out of 318 Metrostat areas in terms of income per capita. Unless we miscounted, there were 257 shipping containers carried by this train. The Capital Limited was due over an hour ago. Another pair of ES44 DC locos was delaying the progress of the Amtrak service following them east. They will be looped here to allow it to pass. Perhaps the most interesting thing about these autoracks is spotting the variety of current and former railroads to which they belong. Besides CSX, we noticed Union Pacific, Southern Pacific, Ferromex, Canadian National, Norfolk Southern, TFM, Conrail, BNSF, and Kansas City Southern. At the head, a P42 DC leads a P40 DC. This is Amtrak's Train 30 Capital Limited. It departed Chicago at 6:40 the previous evening and was due to arrive at Washington, D.C. at 1:05 this afternoon. It's going to be late today, currently running 2 hours behind schedule. There is a 12-minute stop booked at Cumberland for a crew change. Several passengers grabbed the opportunity for a cigarette. Now a brief visit to Hyndman, Pennsylvania. The first train is heading east with an AC44CW and an ES44DC in charge. As the sign said, the settlement was originally known as Bridgeport, A bridge had been built across the Wills Creek around 1800, and boats were needed to take grain down to Cumberland. The town was founded in 1840 bearing the same name. In 1871, the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad came through Bridgeport while under construction from Cumberland to Pittsburgh. At that time, the superintendent of the B&O Connellsville Division was E.K. Hyndman. The town was incorporated in 1877 and renamed in his honour. 20 minutes later, another ES44DC is paired with an AC heavy variant ES44AH. We filmed trains through Hyndman previously in May 2009. They can be found in Volume 8 of the Lineside Video Productions American Railway series, titled Power Over the Alleghenies. On that occasion, our camera was positioned near the yellow caboose on the left in the distance in this view. It seemed that very little had changed in the 9 years since our last visit. This train was filmed in May 2017. Only 3 months later, during August, a 33-car derailment started fires that caused most of the town's residents to be evacuated for several days. We returned to Cumberland just in time to catch the arrival of the westbound Capital Limited. It departed on schedule. Resuming their journey west are two C40-8W locos built in 1991. It's still possible to find some relatively unusual wagons, like these former family line system hoppers. My personal favourites in this train are the boxcars with chassis system markings still just visible. In this part of the programme, we follow the Cumberland Subdivision east to Shenandoah Junction, with calling points at Green Spring, Great Cacapon and Martinsburg. After breakfast, we had one last look at Cumberland before setting off to Green Spring. A westbound train was already passing through when we arrived, with a pair of C40-8Ws providing distributed power on the tail. On the head, an AC44CW leads an ES44DC. These tank cars carried liquefied petroleum gas. The empty white tank car would normally carry hydrochloric acid. Passing the lamppost, the grey tank car is for molten sulphur. This green tanker is labelled for environmentally hazardous substance. The blue box car was rebuilt by Golden West Service, but retains the former Denver and Rio Grande Western reporting mark. Another tank for molten sulphur. A former Chicago Northwestern boxcar. Coal empties are returning west, headed by an ES44AH leading an AC44CW. At Green Spring, cameras took up positions on either side of the crossing at Bass Mountain Road, just to the west of the yard. Hauling this eastbound train, the lead loco is a GE 4400 horsepower Evolution series built in 2005 with DC traction motors. Coupled to the train is another Evolution series, but about 10 years younger. It has AC traction motors and is the ballasted heavy variant for increased tractive effort. Both locos taking these autoracks west were constructed in 1994, 2 of 53 C44-8W models built as the pre-production version of the Dash 9. Later they were upgraded but down-rated to C40-9W standard. They still retain their original yellow nose blue cab livery. "30 minutes later, following the autoracks, there is a Jeep 38-2 in the ES44DC sandwich. At Great Cacapon, the cameras were positioned near the track at opposite ends of Willie Lane, about a quarter of a mile apart. Heading west are an ES44DC leading a C40-8W and an ES44AH. The residents here mow the grass across the road from their homes. Climbing the gentle rise from Woodmont, a C40-8W is paired with another of the locos that was a 1994 build pre-production -9. Great Cacapon is a census-designated place in Morgan County in the eastern panhandle of West Virginia. The population recorded by the 2010 census was only 386. It takes its name from the Cacapon River, which empties into the Potomac just to the east of the town, but was originally known as Cacapon Depot on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad when a post office was established there in 1848. This eastbound unit coal train, powered by a pair of ES44AH locos, is leaving a cloud of coal dust in its wake. Amtrak's Train 30, Capital Limited, from Chicago to Washington, is about to emerge through the murk. It is running on schedule, led by a P40 DC and two P42 DC locos. At Martinsburg, West Virginia, we filmed from the footpath on the embankment that overlooks the track just north of the station, opposite the former Baltimore and Ohio Roundhouse complex. This is all that remains of the complex built by the B&O from 1866 to 1872. The buildings are the central shops and the Western Roundhouse and larger Western shops. The Eastern Roundhouse and shops mirrored these on the west, but are no longer with us. Most recently, in 1990, vandals set fire to pallets in the Eastern Roundhouse, all but destroying the building, the remnants visible just beyond the footbridge. The popularity of Groundhog Day is well known. Perhaps to counter this, the West Virginia section of the Wildlife Help website uses the alternative name woodchuck, warning that this large rodent may undermine foundations and fences and can pose a hazard to equipment, animals and people. A pair of ES-44 DCs are heading west. Construction of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad reached Martinsburg in 1842, with the first roundhouse and shops built there from 1848 to 1850. During the Civil War, Confederate troops under the command of Thomas Stonewall Jackson captured or destroyed 42 locomotives and 386 cars on over 36 miles of track, including 17 bridges. The B&O roundhouse and machine shops were burned down. After the war, the B&O rebuilt the site, including the east and west roundhouses, the bridge and machine shop, and the frog and switch shop. Today, restoration includes the B&O Roundhouse Museum. I'm getting a strange feeling of déjà vu. Speeding east, the train engines are a pair of ET-44AH, ferrying a third, an ES-44AH, and an SD-40-2. The station utilises a lovingly restored building that was once a railroad hotel, constructed in 1848. It is served by the Amtrak Capital Limited, but is also the terminus of the Maryland Transit Administration Brunswick Line MARC services, with 3 departures to Washington early morning, Monday to Friday, returning in the evening. last location of this part of the programme is Shenandoah Junction, with 2 cameras to the west and 1 to the east of the bridge that carries the Norfolk Southern Hagerstown District over the CSX. The Capital Limited, bound for Chicago. In charge of this southbound Norfolk Southern stack are an SD60E, an SD70M-2 and a C40-8W. This eastbound manifest has 2 ES44AH locos at the head. 5 minutes later, an ET44AH leads an ES44AH. The final section of the programme concentrates on the historic Old Town area of Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. Filming locations include the Amtrak station, views from Maryland on the Chesapeake Ohio Canal Trail and from the spectacular Maryland Heights, and, to complete the picture, a view of the trestle on the CSX Shenandoah Subdivision. We begin with 3 trains filmed on a previous visit in October 2011. First, an eastbound unit coal train. The locos are both AC44CWs sporting the YN2 livery. The lead loco, number 517, was involved in a collision near Valparaiso, Indiana on January 6, 2012, just 3 months after being filmed here, and was wrecked. According to forum and newspaper reports, one train rear-ended another, causing it to jackknife, and a third train hit that jackknife. All 3 trains were derailed. Only 2 crew members required hospital treatment for, thankfully, non-life-threatening injuries. Both units at the head of train Q395, number 517, and Illinois Central C40-8W, number 2464, were destroyed by the impact. The original Harpers Ferry tunnel was cut in 1894, but later was widened to reopen in 1931. The Capital Limited, bound for Washington, was running close to schedule. As always, there are plenty of staff available to assist alighting and boarding passengers. On point, the C40-8 was harnessed with AC60CW number 686, with a variation of the YN2 livery having yellow-filled body-side lettering instead of the usual solid blue. At the height of the horsepower race in the 1990s, GE designed the AC6000CW with the 16-cylinder 7HDL prime mover, competing with the SD90 Mac built by EMD. They were the two most powerful single-engine diesel locomotives built. Both types suffered problems, not least of which concerned vibration. Number 686 is now one of the CSX locos re-engined with the GEVO 16 prime mover, rated at 4,600 horsepower and updated with equipment associated with the Evolution series. In effect, they are thought to be type ES46AH, but are classified by CSX as CW46AH. This view from Maryland Heights shows Harpers Ferry situated at the confluence of the Shenandoah River to the left and the Potomac, which the bridges cross here. The bridge on the left leads to Harpers Ferry trestle on the Shenandoah Subdivision, passing the National Park Information Center and St. Peter's Church. The rivers are considerably swollen due to recent heavy rainstorms. In this view looking north, the Potomac River looks much more menacing than usual. The CSX Cumberland Subdivision can be glimpsed winding between the trees on the left of this view, where an eastbound manifest is approaching, led by an SD50-2 and aided by a Union Pacific AC44CW. Westbound autoracks are hauled by AC44CW number 228 and ES44DC number 5410. The bridge used by the Cumberland sub here was constructed at the same time as the widening of the tunnel on a new alignment that allowed the removal of a very sharp curve from the older Shenandoah Subbridge on the left. The Cumberland Subbridge is a deck plate girder construction, whereas the Shenandoah Subbridge, built in 1894, is a steel Pratt truss and plate girder bridge. There is a public footpath on the left-hand side of that bridge in this view. The Capital Limited is running about 50 minutes late. It's drawing forward to allow the rear cars access to the station platform. This is a pair we filmed in Cumberland. "15 minutes later, an ES44AH AC44CW combination headed west. The original Baltimore and Ohio bridge crossing the Potomac was built in 1839, but was destroyed by Confederate action during the Civil War. A Bowman truss bridge replaced temporary structures in 1851. Then a second Bowman truss bridge was opened in 1870 on the same alignment that carried both road and rail traffic. That bridge was destroyed by flooding in 1936. At the head of this train of empty rock hoppers was a pair of AC-44CW locos. The Shenandoah Subdivision runs west from the 1894 Potomac Bridge over this trestle. It is a timber stringer construction with one deck plate span over Bridge Street, which is seen clearly in this view. Following 15 minutes behind were a CSX ES44DC with a C40-8W and a Canadian Pacific AC44CW. This was filmed between the trees from the Chesapeake Ohio Canal towpath. When the river is not at such a high level, it is sometimes possible to climb down the riverbank to get an unobstructed view of the bridge. Power is provided by a C40-8W with a rebuilt SD50-3. For the final scene, we return to the spectacular overlook from Maryland Heights. At the head of this westbound train carrying 254 shipping containers, an ES-44DC led a pair of AC-44CWs and an ES-44AH. A large bird is circling beneath. It will come into view now. We think it is a turkey vulture, or maybe a black vulture. The next edition of American Railway will focus on railroads in the east of Virginia. Besides featuring the CSX RF&P sub, locations will include Manassas, Richmond, and Williamsburg. Meanwhile, we hope you have enjoyed this program exploring railroads between Cumberland and Harpers Ferry. Thank you for joining us.